Hello, my name is Liza George, and welcome. We are sitting here with Larry Michael, CEO of the4answers.com, and Stephen Risnick with Relationships 901. I know today we just wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about how projections sabotage our relationship, correct?
That's a great subject.
I think you two should go into it and, help people who are having troubles in their relationships to understand that.
Okay.
Go for it.
Should I you want me to just
Yeah,
dive in?
of course, just dive in.
Just dive in.
Yeah.
Okay. Bam.
Exactly.
So, maybe dive in is a good metaphor, right?
Yeah.
In that the biggest obstacle to the success in our relationships is what we create before it happens.
Of course. And while it's happening.
Well, while it's happening, actually that creation, the co-creation, is the exciting part of a relationship. That's what we want to happen. But what we don't want to happen is to bring something from the past and project that onto the present and then be interacting based on some experiences we've had in the past. Or to think about something we want in the future and project that onto the present and then have this interaction based on something we want to happen. So when either of those things are going on, we're not present at all for the person that we want to relate to. And we're not really seeing the person. So if I'm talking to a man or a woman and asking them, what's really important to you when you engage in with someone, it ultimately is going to come down to, I really want to be seen and heard. I truly want to be seen and heard. Not, I don't want to be what you want me to be. Mm-hmm. I want to be who I am, and I want you to recognize that. And the person that you're communicating with is really wanting the same thing. That's where trust and deep connection happens. So if we have a projection going on, if we're going, like if you and I meet and I'm going, okay, so I wonder if she's going to fit like my ideal love story, my overarching love story that I've been holding on to for most of my life. That, by the way, might not even be my story. It might be like my parents or someone else's. Okay. But I've been holding on to it, and I'm looking at you going, are you that person? So now I'm like trying to figure out if you fit into this square peg or round hole or whatever it might be. I don't see you. I see what I want you to be. I don't hear you. I hear what I'm listening for that might give me an indication that the time I'm spending here is valuable, right?
Right.
So just energetically, how do you think you're going to feel in that experience?
But everybody does it, so how do you stop yourself from doing it, or how do you learn to listen to yourself so you're not going to do it anymore?
And at that point, I also wanted to explain that earlier on when you said what's going on in the relationship is what we're really looking for, what I meant, as a relationship progresses and you get to know the person, you start building up more and more of these transferences. So for the people who are analytical watching this, we're on the same page, same side of the table. But I've discovered amongst relationship issues that people, as they get to know a person better, feel more comfortable with them, and see different sides of them, all of a sudden the transference issues are better because, oh yeah, I recognize this, I recognize that, and all of a sudden, bingo.
So there's a double-edged sword there. Right?
There always is.
So within that familiarity is now what also comes to the surface is our tendency to go, well, this is the way you were before, so I'm expecting you to be that way again now. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that we're always changing. And if I have an expectation of you remaining the same that you've always been, I don't really need you. I could just have a blow-up doll of you that it performs a certain way, right?
We're not that kind of a program.
No, we're not. We're not. But so the point is, though, is that it's like I get asked all the time about age and women and men and who they want to encounter. Mm-hmm. And what I say constantly is it's not an age issue. It's an alive issue. Mm-hmm. It's if you're really interested in growing and emerging and becoming more than you already are, mm-hmm. that's exciting. That's inspiring, right?
Growth.
But if you're not, if you're like so set in the way that you want things or the way that you are, and there's no room for any expansion, that's not interesting to anybody, really.
Right, and on that note, something that I've been doing some research on lately, there are some people who have concrete thinking patterns.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
for example, you give them these tests, and I can't remember, there's millions of tests. I can't
There
remember
are.
the name of all of them. But people can't understand an abstract, like, for example, this painting. They only see things a certain way. And if you're stuck with somebody who's concrete, A, they're never going to change, and B, nothing's going to change. It's always going to be that way, and you have to realize that too.
Well, you're not with that person. There's not really a relationship. There's not a partnership
Wasn't
you
that
get
the
to have.
truth? Yeah.
You know, so it's like if you get in a relationship and two people are really stuck in their ways, it's just two people that are relating, but there's not a third entity, which is the true relationship. And that's the piece that's got to be co-creative. That's where two people come together and say, I got this, let's get in here and see what we create from that. So then coming back to our projections, if we already know what we want, then you don't get to be in a place of true co-creation. And co-creation and serendipity, that opportunity to experience something you didn't know was going to happen, are essential parts of really a quality relationship. If you want to get to where bliss is, to a really blissful, beautiful, fulfilling relationship, you got to have those two ingredients. So if I'm projecting, then we're in trouble. And you know what that looks like, you're right, it's common, a lot of people do that. It's like, you know, I really would like to have, I'd like to have a life partner, and I want children, and I want this house, and I want this person to be this way with me.
And everybody
right?
does that.
Yeah, so those wants are not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, to be clear about what we really need and enjoy in our life, that's good. But then to step into an encounter and go there, you're not here. And what's happening now in the present is not anything like what is really possible. And if we're heading down the road after trying to get you to fit into a specific category or behavior or overarching love story, we're always going to be disappointed in one way or another. There's a point down the road where it's not happening this way, and then it easily becomes a blame situation, like you didn't or I didn't, or a shame situation. And none of those things need to happen if we're really present and contemporary with our feelings. And from this place, it's also where we have to be very courageous. You know, so it doesn't take any courage to look into the future and go, I want you to be like this, and if you fit into that, great. If you don't, then bye-bye, right? It doesn't really take any courage unless you're doped up with chemistry. And that's another conversation.
That's a separate
But that's
show.
a totally different show, right? And I want to come back and talk to you about that one. But
Saturday night.
the key here is that if you really want to have a true quality experience with someone, be present, be in the discipline of inquiry, be really curious and listen and allow yourself to be seen, and then discover from there what you want. Yeah, in that conversation you may go, wow, you know, this isn't comfortable for me. And you're really a special person, but I can tell that that we're not a great fit.
Yeah.
And it's right now, right? It's like you can't be really very angry about that. It's just the truth.
But isn't it the subconscious mind that's kind of taken over and ruling most of that over, you really being present?
Well, actually, if you're in your mind, you're in trouble anyhow. Where you need to be is in your heart and your body, right? And so while we're up here in this space, we're dealing with all kinds of anxieties and stress and issues and projections. So if you really want to show up, just sink into your body. Sink in your body and be in a really curious, inquisitive place there, and feel into the experience of discovering who someone is.
Well, why don't we start from the beginning for the people who aren't familiar with transfers? Let's explain what it is, how it happens.
Are you talking about just a projection? What?
Yes, I've called it transfers in the past. Pardon. Yes, the projection. Explain to them how, because they're kind of cousins. These two. Explain to them in terms of projection, like how would you define projection for the people who haven't, you and I are familiar with it, you're familiar with it, but not everybody is. So what is projection? How does it happen? Explain it, give us an example so everybody gets it.
Okay, so a projection. Let's say that I'm meeting someone for the first time, right? And what I'm really looking for is a life partner. And I have clear in my mind what that life partner looks like, what they look like, what they feel like, and how we're going to engage with each other, right? So, and it's so clear in my mind that if you and I meet, I'm like evaluating you to go, well, is this the person that I want to hold a certain way? Is this the person that is going to be able to have a conversation with me and have kids with me and experience life with me the way that I have envisioned it, right? So what I'm doing at this point is I'm looking at you and I'm projecting as to whether you fit into this mold, right? So I've done all that, and I'm looking at you like it's an evaluation, right?
Right.
So I'm not really finding out who you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of blocking.
I'm only looking for answers from you that fit into my puzzle piece,
Okay.
right? So the projection is this, I'm looking down the road going, is this the one, right? But at that moment in time, I really don't know for sure because I'm not discovering who you are. And here's the other big trap, is that we can have desires about the way we want to live in the future, but if they're so finely designed, we're in big trouble. And a lot of us think we really, really know what we want to happen, 6 months or a year out. And the reality is we don't.
Can we?
We don't. And so in this precious present, we get to discover what we really want. So it's, I'll give you kind of an extreme example. I work with a lot of couples that are examining open relating. So they've been monogamous and they're thinking, maybe there's other ways to relate. And some of those couples will have titled themselves polyamorous or panamorous or some terminology, right?
Right.
And so they've clearly said, I'm green and you're blue, or whatever the case might be. But those terminologies, those labels, are huge traps because two people don't really know what they are until they interact and discover what they are together.
That's profound.
And that piece gets, if you've got yourself so labeled, which is a projection, right, then you really don't get to experience what this is. Now, we could get together and go, you know what, after talking to you, yeah, for sure, I get that you're monogamous and I'm not.
Okay, right.
And just from this conversation, well, I honor what you are, right? Or I get to be in the place of inquiry with you, right? And I go, this is such a beautiful, juicy, yummy experience. Let's define what we are together in this moment and go from there. Now we get to truly experience the present.
Right.
And we get to be co-creative in our experience, right? And we get to discover. We really get to discover something that isn't something that we've already determined we need, but something that becomes new that's a product of both of us. That's co-creation.
Now, a couple of the members of the audience have been wondering, how do you identify if you meet somebody who's projecting? And what do you do? Like, do you run? Do you walk? Continue talking? Have a drink?
You know what? If you're truly present and you're listening closely to someone, you're going to be able to tell whether they're really listening and curious about who you are or whether they want you to be something else.
And so that's enough.
It's quick.
That's enough.
You can tell. I think I've been
yeah.
able to tell when, a gentleman will ask you your name and then, let me buy you a drink, and you start talking and you realize, like, he's somewhere else. He's not really listening to you because I think he's thinking in his head. He might be thinking about you, but he's not truly listening to what you're saying.
But the problem that
you can watch their eyes, if they're up there searching around for answers.
But the problem that I'm facing is that it could be projection, but it could be other things. I mean, there are many different things that are causing that.
Yeah.
So other things are either going to be constructions or projections. So other things like, the last relationship I had with the guy, he was like abusive, and I don't want that again. And so you're looking for all the indicators that he might be the next abusive guy.
Oh, that's horrible. Yes.
That's the worst.
Micromanaged.
Yeah.
That's the absolute worst. If we enter into any situation trying to avoid what we had before, or having this conversation saying, I don't want another abusive guy, the universe is going to give us an abusive person. The universe doesn't know the difference between I want or I don't want.
So what should you be saying? Like,
it's training the universe to know want versus don't want would be my first.
Yeah, our superconscious mind, when it makes a request, it gets it. I mean, it gets it. So what you need to say is state in the positive what you truly want. I want a loving, compassionate, understanding, honest, vulnerable, authentic, whatever those words might be, but make them positive, make
And
them
not
yummy
negative.
and juicy. Yeah,
Okay.
never, ever, ever
Do the negative.
go into something saying, I don't want this.
Okay.
Because you will get it for sure. It's like telling a kid, don't drop the milk. Bam, the
Drop
milk.
the
And I'd like to actually, if you're available, to have a show with you about that, because I've been listening to some CDs on this issue, and it's interesting. I mean, I have a science background, so yeah, I look at it, half of this, half of that. So you and I, that's where we're slightly different. But it's worth exploring, because a lot of people don't get it. And just in case it's right, and I actually think it may be right, you know what I mean?
I've tried to prove it wrong, and I was wrong. It's every time
It's out there.
every time I don't listen to that own advice, I go, oh, well, you didn't listen to yourself.
It
did
might
you?
be like the law of physics, like the Pareto principle. Tell me it doesn't exist, the 80-20 rule. You better believe it exists.
Sit down.
Well, gentlemen, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes, so let's kind of wrap this up and say what you'd like to say to get us out the door. Because I'm projecting, I think.
Well, one thing I will
Well, you're
add,
producing,
and
it's good.
I love what you just said. I love what you just said. It's like, and this is what I've been kind of trying to tell my audiences is, everybody's got these lists, this, non-negotiables, this, that. God, like you just said, turn around, find out what you two can create, because what you bring, what the other person brings, it's unique. Don't just dismiss somebody because of, this, that, or whatever. And that happens. Well, I'm in Southern Cal, so of course.
Yeah.
But it happens daily. I mean, I hear about it so often, it's getting old.
Well, look at here. Everybody shows up in our life for a reason, right? And everybody shows up exactly when they're supposed to, how they're supposed to. It's no coincidence that we're sitting here right now. It's no coincidence that someone's listening to this show right now. There's something for us to get out of it. So if it's a first meeting with someone, be in that inquiry space to discover who it is that you're meeting, because there's either a message that you're going to get that's giving you better clarity about what you desire and feel comfortable with, or you're going to discover in that conversation that the other person comes and says, wow, thank you so much. I wouldn't have ever thought of that, and I'm so clear now about what I'm interested in. I never would have got that without
Or you could
this
learn
experience.
what you don't want.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
both.
I've learned
Yeah.
that. Like, I think to myself, like you say, oh, I don't want the loser, and then you meet another loser, and and all that does is justify
Well,
that I
listen to what you
definitely
said.
don't want the loser.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Because I'm
yeah.
saying the negative, but now I got to turn it into a positive. But I do then realize, like, oh, I really don't want you because you're what I'm not looking for, and I'm just reiterating that you're not what I want.
So I'm going to invite you with that conversation to get clear about what you want and not so much what you don't want.
Right.
So when you see that, when that happens, instead of going, oh, I don't want that, be clear now about what you do want and speak that. Think that. Because if you continue to, steer away from, try and move away from, you will get it. It will just keep coming back to you. So you've got to turn it into the positive if you really want to track that in. And then, the last piece I'll say in the last couple minutes we have is that what you do want is also what you need to be. So many people say, I really want a relationship. I really want a deep, connected, committed relationship. And when they look at their lives, they go, am I ready for that? Am I truly ready for that? Is my house in order? And it might not be. And if you really, really want to track that into your life and it's not happening, you're either projecting something or running from, or your house is just not in order yet.
Right.
Because if you're totally ready for it, if you're the person that can receive that, they're going to line up. I mean, they will be lined up. This has been a lifelong lesson for me, so I know this one really well. I'm really good at romance and creating things, and I've had a pretty good idea of the kind of relationship that I'd be happy in, right? But I have attracted something other than that, right?
Right.
So at a certain point, I finally actually had a very wise person say to me, can I just offer something to you? And I went, what's that? I said, do you feel like you're really ready to receive what you're asking for? And I kind of went, I get it. So even in our most present moments, we may not believe that we're totally ready or even what's the word? That who we are is not good enough to really receive what we want. Right?
Okay.
We may not have our financial house in order, or our spiritual house in order, or our family house in order, yet we're still out there looking. And we can meet all kinds of people, but they're going to pick up on the energy that you're not really ready.
Right.
And so they'll move on. They'll just move past you. They won't be attracted in. So if you really want a beautiful relationship, be in a beautiful relationship with yourself and be able to live in that place, and then you're going to attract those people in. They will line up for you. They will show up for you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're